ways.
This is from a viewer. How does your perspective on the meaning of life account for evil and suffering? Would you like to take that first, Dr. Peterson?
Well, I read something very interesting many decades ago. It was a Jewish meditation on finitude. And it was presented in what you might describe as a Jewish Zen koan. There aren't that many of those. So here was the question. What does a being who's omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent lack? So those are the three classical attributes of God. And the answer was limitation. And that was the reason for the creation of man. That there's something about limitation that the absolute lacks. Say, well, being requires limitation, let's say, because if you can be anything at all at any moment, then you're everything at once, and in some sense you're nothing at all. We're in this situation. Our being is defined by our limitations, and that produces suffering. The question is whether there is a mode of being that justifies the suffering. That's the fundamental religious question. And I think that the answer to that is yes. So being requires limitation. Limitation necessitates suffering, but there are modes of being that allow you to transcend the suffering. That's the hope. And then with regards to evil, it seems to me, I have to speak metaphysically or theologically here, that a universe without the possibility of evil is also one without the possibility of good. And I would say that if human beings conducted themselves properly, we could have a universe where free choice was the rule. We were free to choose evil, but there would be no evil because we would choose good. And I think that we should be very careful at laying the existence of evil at the feet of the Creator without looking to our own role in producing it. So that's my answer to that question.
Dr. Craig, would you like to? Okay. This is a question for you specifically, Dr. Peterson. Do you believe religions like Christianity have a role in the pursuit of discovering that which is opposite of evil?
Well, I think that that is what they are, fundamentally. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the underlying narrative structure of the Bible, for example. It's a very strange collection of books, but it has a narrative structure. And the narrative structure is something like, well, people fell into history when they became self-conscious. And because they were self-conscious, conscious of their own limitations, conscious of suffering itself, they were also able to become and motivated to become resentful and cruel and bitter and homicidal and genocidal. And that's, I suppose, in some sense, the genesis of evil. Our life is bounded by suffering and tainted by malevolence. And there's a pathway through that. And as far as I can tell, the entire Bible is a meditation on the pathway through that. Now, it's not a meditation we understand because most of it's story. It's embedded in stories. And stories are the way that we transmit information that we don't yet understand. So, but I think that the Bible, properly understood, is the best, what would you say? It's the best set of instructions that we have to understand what it would mean to live a life that would enable us to bear suffering nobly and to constrain malevolence. That's what it looks like to me. I mean, I can give you a quick example of that. There's an idea, deep idea, that emerges in the first chapter of Genesis, that being that extracts habitable order out of nothingness and potential uses truthful speech to do that as the mechanism by which that occurs. And that the habitable order that's extracted from the chaotic potential by truthful speech is good. And that the capacity to do that is part and parcel of each human being, something I believe to be as accurate as anything can be accurate. And so there's an idea right in the beginning, right in the first chapter of that book, that if people spoke truthfully, that the order they spoke into being would be good. And I believe that to be the case. And I think that people experience that in their own lives. You know what happens if you lie to yourself. You know what happens if you lie to other people and betray them. You produce little pockets of hell within you and around you. And if you cease to do that, then things improve. And that begs the question of just how good they could get if we ceased to do that altogether. So.
Thank you.